Hello and welcome back to the Rocket League Mapmaking tutorial series. This is episode 14, where we're going to talk about how to accept player inputs or how to use player inputs in maps. Now, it's actually pretty simple once you know how to do it, and I have to give credit to Acrace for figuring this out. It's pretty simple once you know the process. First, you're going to need something like this. This is basically a way of setting player inputs. This is the version I've used and modified. This was from Panic's Air Race. This is what Giddick did a while back, and it's pretty much the same thing, but I've kind of modified it a little bit. Basically, it sees, I might have gone over this already, but it basically checks to see if the player ID has already been set, and if it is, it sets to player 1, and if it's not set, it adds it, and then it goes and it sets the player input. So it basically sets the player inputs 1, 2, 3, and 4, and doesn't overlap anyone, which is nice. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a subsequence, obviously, so we can do player inputs. Everything. So this entire tutorial is going to be talking about one node. It's going to be pretty quick. It's just going to be about this one node called is action pressed. And so I'm just going to create a simple countdown start like that, and then P and left click to connect that. And then I'm going to put a gate because it's nice and simple. And then we're going to put that check. And then put the delay 2.02 seconds. So basically this is just going to keep checking every 0.02 seconds if the action's pressed. And it's time to talk about this node. Now this node is pretty simple to use. It only has one modifier, I guess, or controller. It's called action name. And the instigator is pretty simple. All you have to do is set it to player 0. And it has to be player 0. It can't be, right now I have player 1 through 4, so it can't be a player object like this. It has to be player 0 specifically. And so the way this node works is basically if the action is pressed, it responds with true. And if it's not pressed, it responds with false. So usually you would do something like this, where if it's not touched, it keeps checking, and then if it is touched, it'll do something. Next, we have to talk about this thing called TA input. Now, this is a file in the Rocket League game files. I've changed it from a .ini to a .txt just so you can go through and read it without it being a initialized file, and so you can modify it for whatever you want. But this is the exact file. This hasn't been changed at all. So text file is set up pretty simple. Basically, it has the action and then whatever key you need to hit for the action. So, for example, if you hit W on a keyboard, it goes forward. And if you want controller inputs, you could just go down. Right trigger axis is just throttle forward. This is where you can find any input that you would need. So, the action name is what these are. This is the action name. So, for example, if I wanted something to show up when I hit jump, I can just put jump there. And so anytime I hit jump, it would respond true. So let me just add a draw text or something over here. And then just make this say hello, something like that for a second. Now, that is it for single player. If you want an action, you can just do jump, and then it'll do whatever. Now, if you want this to repeat indefinitely, you just set this up here, and instead of making it just when it's false, you just make it repeat, and then whenever you want to stop, you just close the gate. But next we need to talk about how it works for multiplayer, because for multiplayer it's a bit different. This still has to remain player 0, but how do you separate the inputs between players? Well, it's actually pretty simple. All you have to do is have a compare objects, which you can find here in condition and comparison. Or you could obviously go up here and just type in objects. And it's right there. I don't usually use that search feature. But once it's true, we're just going to check. And we're going to hit N and left click. And it's going to create that connection right there. And then in here, I'm just going to type P1 because I'm named P1, P2, P3, P4. It's nice to name things quickly or name things in short variables because then you don't have to type as much. And then for this, I'm going to hit P and left click, and it's going to connect a player node, and then we're going to make that player 0. And then I'm going to copy paste this and make it for 4 players. And then I'm basically going to connect them like that. Now, next I'm just going to change the player variables. Basically what that's going to do is that if it doesn't equal player 1, it's going to check if it's player 2. So for example, if player 2 hits jump, it's not going to be player 1 because the player object is not going to equal. So it's going to, since this doesn't equal, it's going to go check if it's player 2. And if it's not player 2, it's going to check if it's player 3. If it is player 2, then it's going to stop. It's not going to keep going. So you don't have to worry about that. Now, if you wanted to, you could just have a miscellaneous and a draw text like that. And just like that, that would work client side. But if you wanted to sync between all players, you're going to have to use Netcode. So we're going to hit R and left click and type WSNC, and then I'm going to type P1 input. Actually, I'm going to type input P1, and then I'm going to copy the first part, and then I'm just going to do this. So I can basically just keep R. I just can hit R and left click and then quickly copy paste it and then just add the number at the end. It's nice to make things as simple as possible. Well, for naming purposes, because otherwise, if you have to make 8 of these for 8 players, which right now I'm obviously only demonstrating with 4, but you have to make these with 8 players, it's going to be annoying to change the variables that many times. And then change that to client side. So now when player 1 hits jump, it's going to do whatever this netcode sequence is. And I mean, this could be, again, just a draw text of player 1 hit jump. And then you could keep going, player 2, player 3, player 4. I'm not going to be doing multiplayer tests. I'm just going to do a single player test because I know this can work for multiplayer. But I'll just do this for demonstration purposes. So just like that, you have player 4, 3, 2, and 1. And that's it. And then if you want to stop checking if someone's hit jump, so let's say you want this to only be a one-time thing, you can just go here and close the gate. I don't want to stop it. I'm going to have it keep going. But another way you can do this is you could just do 0.02 at the front of this, since I'm doing this, and then true and false will just repeat it. Instead of using a gate. The gate is only there if you want to close it, because you obviously can't close this. But you can just keep it going like that if you really wanted to. And 0.02 is a little bit quick. Maybe 0.1 is usually good. If you have a ton of is action press happening in multiplayer that are too quick, it's going to lag because it's going to try and run too many processes at once. But that's it for player input. So I'm going to go in game and show you that this works. All right, so here we are in game. And I'm going to wait until the countdown ends. But right now I am not in a normal... I'm not in a Rocket plugin match, so netcode's not going to work. But for single player, it doesn't matter. And right there you can see player 1 hit jump. And obviously I can change this to whatever I wanted. So if I go back to UDK real quick and is action pressed, I can change this to any action I want. So let's say I want to see whenever I'm steering right. So I'll just take steer right, copy paste it there, and I'm going to leave the match before I paste over it. All right, so this time it's going to detect anytime we steer right. So obviously it's after countdown starts, so I have to wait. And then anytime I turn right, it's still going to say I hit jump because I didn't change the draw text. But you can see anytime I turn right, it shows the text. Anytime I turn left, it doesn't show up. Jumping no longer works. Oh, I hit right there. It's my fault. I'm used to turning right. But obviously jumping, anything else doesn't work. It's only when I start turning right that it starts displaying the text again. And then obviously you can change this to whatever you want in here. I can make it toggle scoreboard, chat, and stuff like that. So I hope you found this tutorial useful. It should be a quick one. I'll see you in the next episode where we start talking about everything about Adobe Flash. I'll see you then.